Hi guys, Brand here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today we're going to be talking about something I find interesting. It's kind of a back and forth topic that happens in the Dead by Daylight community a lot. One side likes to think of Dead by Daylight as more of a competitive experience, talking about, sweating and balance and all that. But the other side kind of sees Dead by Daylight as a party game, something more akin to Mario Party, where it's more related to just having fun with friends, just chilling and vibing. And anybody who tries to sweat or, try hard at the game, they're not understanding the fact that the game is mostly just RNG and it's mostly there just to have fun. And there's always a lot of back and forth between these two camps. It's almost as much of a rivalry as the survivor versus killer thing. And many of DBD content creator has made a video about, oh, well, is the game actually competitive and sweaty, or is the game actually a party game? We actually reacted to a Choi video recently where Choi talked about, is DBD actually a party game? And there's a lot of info in there about that when it comes to like rubber band mechanics and how DBD doesn't have rubber band mechanics, and that's something that's pretty consistent in party games, stuff like that. But the point of this video is that I feel like DBD is somewhere in the middle, and there's actually a much better analogy when it comes to what Dead by Daylight is actually like in terms of, sweat versus party game. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. I think Dead by Daylight, in terms of what kind of game it actually is, actually airs itself mostly to a trading card game, to a TCG. A lot of you guys are probably into TCGs. I mean, trading card games are pretty pervasive, especially Magic. Almost everybody plays Magic. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was more my thing. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my favorite trading card game growing up. If you're not aware, TCGs in general employ a lot of RNG, but also skill and creativity into just their general format. And we're going to break down the ways that is and how that relates to Dead by Daylight. In TCGs, there's always going to be a level of RNG that you can't fight, and that being the order of your deck. If you shuffle, it doesn't matter unless you're cheating, unless you're cheating and ordering the cards on purpose. The order of your deck is always going to be a mystery. It's always going to be RNG. Like, there's no way you can determine what cards are coming. Most TCGs have cards that, like, hey, you can look at the next 5 cards coming in your deck, or you can draw a specific card from your deck. But every TCG to some extent has the fact that the order of the cards that you get from your deck is random. And just like in DBD, you never know what perks your opponent's bringing. You don't know what maps you're going to. Even the maps you're going to have different orientations and different palette strengths, different tile spawns. All these can be potentially working against you. Now in TCGs, you can do a lot to fight the RNG, and you should be doing that if you actually want to stand a chance in these TCGs, like making your deck count short, making it down to like 40. That way, even though you have the RNG of not knowing what cards are coming, the fact that your deck is as small as possible means you're going to be hitting them more often. This also includes making sure only good cards, only good meta cards are in your deck. So even if you draw a card that you don't necessarily want or need at that specific point for your strategy, it's still a good card to have instead of having something that's just a dud, something that just takes up space in your hand. And it's the same way with Dead by Daylight. Even though bad map RNG can really screw you over, if you still learn how to loop well, whether that be killer or survivor, you still don't know how to run tiles very well, you're going to mitigate that RNG a lot. You can't know what the other side is bringing in terms of perks or add-ons, but if you yourself bring good perks and add-ons, you have the tools at your behest to try and fight back if you find a team that's sweaty or, meet your maker, so to speak. And just like in trading card games, that RNG affects both sides equally. Both sides can suffer bad maps. Both sides can be faced with bad builds or bad perks that make them have a horrible time. It's not like one side pervasively has a worse effect with RNG than the other. You can kind of make arguments as like, well, maps are a big RNG and most maps are survivor sided, but then again, the slowdown in this game is pretty good too. Like, it's kind of just a back and forth, but the point being that both sides have to deal with the RNG. It's not optional to interact with the RNG, just like in TCGs. It's not optional that your decks are random or are supposed to be as random as possible. Like, both sides have to deal with that. Sometimes in TCGs, I would never did well in any tournament that I ever played in. In the handful of tournaments that I played in, there were a lot of matches that I just lost because, well, I just didn't get the right cards in my hand. I didn't get the cards that helped me draw other cards that would help me win, and I just lost just because the RNG said so. That's a hard pill to swallow. It's a very, very hard pill to swallow. That, no matter how well you build your deck, sometimes you just don't get the right RNG and you lose, and that's the only reason why, is you just didn't draw what you needed. Just like sometimes in DBD, if you get map offering to Ormond and the whole team has toolboxes and balanced landing, there really wasn't a high chance you were going to win that game. But even if you brought a lot of slowdown, even if you were a fairly good killer, that's a pretty insurmountable odd for you to overcome. Sometimes you just lose in Dead by Daylight just because you just happen to run into somebody who brought all the right stuff, and it's not your fault. I don't know. I just thought this was a very, very interesting middle ground between the two ideas, because it doesn't have to be a competitive game only. It doesn't have to be a party game only, because trading card games can be both. A lot of people like to create what was like a home meta, which basically is like, okay, we're going to use cards that we know aren't meta, we know aren't good, but because we're all kind of mutually using bad decks and bad cards, it doesn't really matter. We're just here to have fun. We're just here to vibe. We're just here to like kick back some sodas and just mess around with the game, just something to do. And Dead by Daylight is a lot of the same way, where you can just kind of run whatever you want. In DBD, it's a little different, because when you're going out there to play against basically anybody, you may run into people that are using quote unquote like the home meta that are also running weird perks, weird builds. But whereas like you could also run into people who are running the absolute best meta, you know, totally abiding by the ban list, doing all that stuff. Like, they could ruin your day. And I think that is the difference. And I do think that is where like a lot of DBD frustrations come from, is because a lot of DBD players do kind of want to make that like home meta style that like TCGs have, where like if you're just playing with a bunch of your friends in the neighborhood or at your local shop, you guys may not care about the meta, you may not care about playing competitively, and you just want to vibe, you just want to have fun. So you guys just mutually all bring underwhelming stuff or not very, very good cards and create very, very underwhelming decks, but you're still having fun and hanging out with each other. But you can't enforce that on the wider community. So honestly, a shop is actually like a card shop is actually a very, very good analogy for that, because it's kind of like the same deal. If there's like a card night at a card shop, you and your friends that play there all the time are probably using stuff that you more enjoy to use, because it's not like a tournament setting, but like it's in most card shops, it's open. Anybody can come in and play with you guys and buy up the cards and do all that stuff. So they can sit down with like the latest meta, the latest cards, the latest deck that just dropped, that's super OP and super frustrating and super unbalanced, and just make you guys all miserable. Like it's literally like the exact same setup. Now, of course, in that setting, in like a card shop, you just say, GG's, you're an adult, and you just don't freak out about it. In Dead by Daylight, we like to freak out about it. We like to be babies about it, which is just a wider community problem in general. Yeah, I just thought it was a better analogy than trying to go into, is it a party game or is it a competitive game? Because just like in trading card games, it's a little bit of both. There's a bit of RNG that you can't fight, that you can't circumvent in any way. Some people are using meta, some people aren't, but in general, there's a little bit of RNG and there's a little bit of competitiveness, and I think that's what makes trading card games super fun, and that's one of the reasons I find Dead by Daylight very fun, is that it is a good mix of both. So yeah, what do you guys think of this analogy? Let me know if you agree or disagree down in the comments below. But that's gonna be it for today's video, friends. But I do upload daily, so we'll see you tomorrow. But if I do not, I will see you when I see you. Bye bye.